Welcome to a coffee chat in a van. This is a somewhat regular series of videos I do where it's just us sitting down and having a little chat, hopefully while enjoying a cup of very good coffee. Now, I am enjoying a cup of good coffee. I would not say this is very good coffee, but this is good coffee. And I can tell you what that is. I have the bag here. This is from a company called Chameleon, and they are widely available here on the west coast of the United States. And I normally stay away from this brand because they do a lot of flavored coffees, and I'm not so keen on flavored coffees. For one, I don't want anything other than a coffee flavor in my coffee. I know people like flavored coffees, and that's a thing that is incredibly popular, which is probably why this brand is so popular, because they specialize in different flavors of coffee. But yeah, I've just kind of stayed away from them because I don't approve of flavored coffees myself. Now, I do add a little bit of either half and half or cream or oat milk, like I have today, to my coffee normally. But other than that, I don't like any flavors, and I also don't like any sugar in my coffee. So I just want my coffee to be pretty plain, although I do add the half and half or cream. Now, I went ahead and tried this coffee because it was on sale and it was less than $5. I think it was about $4.50 for this bag. And that's a pretty good price for an organic coffee. And the only reason I did buy the coffee was because it was on sale, and also that it is a whole bean coffee. I like grinding my coffee myself, and it is a light roast coffee, and that's another thing that I like better. I like a lighter roast. I don't care for the medium or dark roast. So this kind of hit all the little buttons for me, and so I went ahead and gave it a try. Happy that I tried this on sale. I don't think I would have appreciated this coffee quite so much if I bought it at its regular price, which is usually well over $10 a bag. So I'm happy to try it. Probably wouldn't buy it again unless I saw it on a very good sale like I got this bag. Now, hopefully you're enjoying a nice cup of coffee yourself. And if you haven't brewed up a cup yet, I would suggest you just put this video on pause and go brew up yourself a cup of preferably coffee. If you do brew up a cup of tea, just keep that to yourself. I don't want to know. Now, getting into the reason for this coffee chat video, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about a little sentence that I uttered in a recent video. And in that video, I was talking about my van here, talking about how I have now passed my 6-year anniversary of living full-time in this little minivan. This is a minivan, very small. My living space in the van here is about 4 foot by 7 foot, give or take. And that doesn't give me a lot of space to store items that aren't entirely necessary. So talking about the lack of storage I have here in the van, I mentioned that sometimes the van keeps me from buying things that I may not really need or may not utilize as much as I should. And that's a big benefit to me in that I'm not spending money on something that I ultimately wouldn't be using much. And with that, I gave an example of a kayak and a bicycle. Now, I thought that this was a fairly straightforward comment that would be understood very easily, given the size of my van and the kind of lack of storage that I have here in my van. But it seems as though quite a few people did not understand what I meant. Now, when I talk about owning a bike or owning a kayak and how I could add one to my setup here, it wouldn't be easy, of course. A kayak would be maybe a little bit more difficult to add to my setup. If I put a kayak up on my roof, of course, that would shield a little bit of my solar panel, which would affect my power. So that would be a little bit of a difficult thing to add on. I could do it. I see plenty of other vans have kayaks that they put up on their roof, and they don't seem to mind losing a little bit of solar power. To me, I think that would be a big problem. I think that I would definitely need the solar power more than I would use the kayak, if that makes sense. Now, I'm generally in an area that is not a place where I would be able to use a kayak, and so the kayak is probably not the best example of something big to add to my van that I don't really need. So we'll focus on the bicycle, I think. So a bicycle is very appealing to lots of people, including me from time to time. And if I were to get a bike, I would probably use it on occasion, but I would first have to think about where I'm going to put a bike. Now, if it's a normal, traditional bike, I could certainly put a hitch on the back of my van. Would be about $100 to install a hitch on the back of my van. That would be an easy solution. I see lots and lots of vans that do that. Lots of friends of mine that live out of vans and cars do that, and they love their bike, and they have no problem putting it on the outside on a hitch like that. I think that if you've owned a bike, I've owned a bike in the past, you know that bikes take a little bit of maintenance, and if you leave them out in the sun and the rain and all, that maintenance can be compounded. But if I really wanted a bike, of course, I would put up with the maintenance of it. Maybe I could wrap it in something. I know some friends of mine do that. They have a little carrier that they wrap up their bike with, and that keeps some of the dirt off of it, keeps some of the sunshine off of it, and that keeps their maintenance down to a minimum, at least as minimal as you can be having a bike outside strapped on the back of your vehicle as you're driving down the road. But I don't think that I would like to put up with that, and so that is a consideration that I think about having a bike, all of that extra maintenance. Another thing is, if I did put a bike on the back of my van, store it on the back of my van, that would block my rear view camera. And this van comes with a rear view camera. For one, this van doesn't have any windows in the back, and so having a camera that comes on every time I put the van in reverse has been incredibly great. There's times where I would have run over something or even somebody if I didn't have that camera that would give me an extra set of eyes out the back, out that back that I just can't see because I don't have windows. So the idea of putting anything up in front of that camera and blocking my view, making my driving a little bit more dangerous, is probably something I don't want to do. So that would be another reason that I probably wouldn't want to have a bike out on the back of my van. So lots of reasons of not having a bike out on the back of my van, but there are some other possibilities. Of course, I could put the bike up on the roof. That would be another thing I could do. I don't think that I would really like having to wrestle a heavy bike up and down off of the roof of my van, so that to me would be out of the question. But it is another option of a place to store a bike. And then there is another option in that there are folding bikes, and I would be able to put a folding bike, say, inside the van on my passenger seat. Now, I do have to give friends and family a ride from time to time, and so I'm not really sure what I would do with the bike when I was giving my friends and family a ride. That would be a bit of a hassle for me, but it would work. I could put the bike maybe on my bed in back, although that's not a good idea for me. But I mean, that would work. And again, if I really wanted a bike and really thought that I was going to use a bike, putting a folding bike in on the passenger seat would definitely work. One little issue with that is it would block my view to my rear view mirror. And again, because I have very few windows in this van, I really don't want anything blocking my rear view mirror. And so to me, that would be another safety issue. And so that's not something that I would want to do. And you can see that I've really thought about this. I've really gone through this and thought about all the different options of places that I could store a bike, things that I could do to have a bike. But it really does come down to the fact that I don't really want a bike. But I do get this idea from time to time that a bike would be nice. And the only reason I get this idea is, one, I'll see an advertisement for a bike, or two, a friend of mine will get a bike and we'll be talking about their shiny new bike and how great it is. And that will get me thinking that I might want a bicycle. But when I really stop and think about it, a bike is not really something that I really would use. And I know this for a fact because back when I lived in a house, I had a bike. And I really thought that it was something that I wanted. It was a great bike. It had a bunch of bins and carriers on it. I could actually ride it down to the grocery store, put all my groceries in it, and ride back to my house. And so I thought that with that being the case, I would use it for grocery runs, and I would also use it just for exercise. And in the several years that I owned that bike, I used it maybe 4 times. Just didn't really want to ever seem to use the bike. So that's another reason that I think about not really wanting to take on a bike, having to have some issues with my vision when I drive, wherever I put it, and also just the maintenance of it. I remember trying to maintain that old bike, and that just wasn't something that I enjoyed doing. When I wanted to use it, I wanted to just jump on the bike and use it, and it seemed like that was just never the case. And I did buy that bike brand new. It was a brand new bike, very good quality bike, but bikes are just a bit of a maintenance nightmare. That's just what they are. People that like bikes put up with it. I think those of us that don't see the need for a bike as much as somebody that loves bikes, maybe don't like the maintenance quite so much. And so thinking about all of this, I just realized that I'm not going to use a bike. Even if I had one, I just wouldn't use it. Just like I thought in the past I wanted one, and then once I got it, I didn't use it. I want to get out and walk. That's what I want to do. So for me to spend money on a bicycle or even a kayak like we were talking about before, this would be something that I would use so little that it just wouldn't equal the amount of money I'd spend on it, and it wouldn't equal the amount of maintenance that I would have to put into to keep the item going. Fact of the matter is, I want to walk. Wherever I am, I want to park my van, I want to find a nice safe place to park my van, and then walk. And I might walk a couple of miles in a day, or I might walk 10 or 15 miles in a day. And that's what I want to do. I don't want to be on a bike. I don't want to be driving my van. I want to walk. So because my preference is to walk everywhere and not to bike, I would look at spending money on a bike as being money not well spent. But I would also look at something that would help me walk as to be money definitely well spent. And I can give you a good example, and that is these shoes that I have been using for the last couple of years. These are rather unusual shoes. I haven't talked about these before because I think most people would not appreciate these shoes, although they are the only shoe I ever want to wear anymore, and that is because they are specifically designed for walking and hiking, and that is what I enjoy doing the most, walking and hiking. And they are a very expensive shoe. I think the new version of this shoe was about $140 or $160, somewhere in there. Now they are holding up quite well, except for the sole. The sole of these shoes are being worn down quite a bit over the couple of years that I have been using them, and that's probably because these are mostly designed for trail running or walking, and I seem to be doing much more city walking lately versus trail walking, which I do prefer. It's just that I've been in the city for the most part. So these have gotten a little bit worn, but as you can see, the tops of them are perfectly fine. And of course, I've still got plenty of sole to use out of these. So I've still got lots of wear to get out of these shoes. But when it comes time to replace these, I'm not going to bat an eye on spending money, big money, on replacing these shoes. Now, I would regret spending money on a bicycle because, again, not something that I would really use much. Not like these shoes where I would be using them every day. And so the bike would be money that is not well spent, as well as giving me something I'd need to maintain, as well as something I'd probably worry about a little bit. If I had a bike on the back of my van, even if it was locked up pretty well, I think in some of the areas that I park occasionally, I think someone would probably help themselves to that bike eventually. So if you had some questions about why I don't want to have a bike myself, I hope this has just given you a little bit of insight into why I don't want to own a bike, at least not for right now. And hopefully you understand that it's because I want to walk. I want to walk and I want to hike. So I want to do everything I can to do more walking and more hiking. And I want to stay away from anything that will keep me from doing more walking and more hiking. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that has answered some questions. And I hope you've had a nice cup of coffee on our chat here. And I would just like to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it.